Daria had always believed in love, the kind that survives storms, the kind that lasts forever. For 12 years, she and Mark had built a life together, a solid, predictable, and, to the outside world, enviable life. A beautiful house in the suburbs, 2 children, and successful careers. But behind closed doors, cracks had begun to form in their perfect facade. Mark had always been a dedicated husband, a man who prided himself on loyalty and responsibility. But with the weight of responsibilities, work, children, bills, expectations, the passion that once burned between them had dwindled to a dim ember. Conversations had become mechanical, kisses brief, and nights filled with exhausted silence rather than whispered desires. Then came Anton. Anton was everything Mark wasn't: spontaneous, unpredictable, intense. They met at a corporate event where Daria was representing her company. It started with innocent conversations, compliments that felt refreshing, laughter that was effortless. But then came the late-night messages, the stolen moments at work, the undeniable tension whenever they were alone. Daria had told herself that it was harmless, a distraction, a reminder that she was still desirable, still a woman outside of being a mother and a wife. But the first time she met Anton in a dimly lit hotel room, she knew she had crossed a line she could never erase. The guilt was immediate, yet intoxicating. The thrill of secrecy, of being wanted in a way she hadn't felt in years, consumed her. She told herself she would stop, that it was a mistake. But mistakes, when repeated, become choices. For months, Daria lived a double life. By day, she was the perfect wife and mother. By night, she was someone else entirely. She would return home after her clandestine meetings, crawl into bed beside Mark, and pretend nothing had changed. But everything had. Then one evening, as she kissed her children goodnight and entered the bedroom, she found Mark sitting at the edge of the bed, holding her phone. The screen was illuminated with an unread message from Anton. "I miss you already. Can't wait to see you again." Daria's breath hitched. The air between them turned to ice. "Who is he?" Mark's voice was steady, eerily calm. That was worse than if he had yelled. "Mark, Don't lie to me, not now." She swallowed, searching for words that wouldn't come. The weight of her betrayal crashed down on her, heavier than ever. Mark stood, pacing the room. "I had my suspicions. You've been distant, distracted, but I never wanted to believe it." He exhaled sharply, his voice thick with emotion. "Do you love him?" The question shattered her, because the truth was, she didn't. Anton was a fantasy, an escape. He was never real in the way Mark was. "No," she whispered. "It was never about that." Mark stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Then, without another word, he walked out. Daria sank to the floor, gripping her chest as if she could hold together the pieces of the life she had just destroyed. Days passed in unbearable silence. Mark barely spoke to her. When he was home, he avoided eye contact, kept conversations minimal. Their children sensed the tension, but were too young to understand. One evening, she found him sitting in the darkened living room, an untouched glass of whiskey in his hand. "I keep thinking about us," he murmured, not looking at her. "About who we were and what we've become. I wonder if there was something I could have done differently." Tears stung her eyes. "Mark, it wasn't you. It was me, my selfishness, my weaknesses." Finally, he turned to her. "Then why? Why throw away everything we built?" She had no answer that would make it right. "I didn't think I was throwing it away. I just felt lost, and I let myself believe that someone else could fill the emptiness. But he never could." A long silence stretched between them before Mark sighed. "I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I do know that I can't keep pretending like nothing happened." Her heart clenched. "Does this mean we're over?" Mark took a sip of his drink, then set the glass down. "It means we have a long road ahead, and I don't know where it leads." Daria nodded, knowing that for the first time in months, she was finally facing reality. And no matter how painful, she would walk that road, even if it meant walking it alone. Weeks turned into months. Mark's distance remained, though he stayed for the children. Daria did everything she could to make amends, cooking his favorite meals, leaving him notes, giving him space. But the damage was deep. She stopped hearing from Anton altogether. The thrill she once felt had turned into disgust for herself. She realized Anton was nothing more than an escape, a temporary fantasy that had cost her everything real. Then one night, Mark didn't come home. Daria paced the house, heart pounding. Had he met someone else? Was he at a bar drowning his sorrows? When he finally walked in at dawn, his face unreadable, she knew the answer before he spoke. "I needed to think," he said quietly, "to be alone, to understand if there's anything left of us." She nodded, not daring to ask where he had been. "And?" he exhaled. "I don't know, Daria. I just don't know." The uncertainty was torture, but she deserved it. If there was even a sliver of hope, she would hold on to it. And so, the long road to redemption began, one painful step at a time.